We all know that the latest labour force survey showed that at least 100,000 workers in the manufacturing industry lost their jobs in the first quarter, and it's one of the reasons that the ANC in Parliament is calling for a once-off debt forgiveness programme for retrenched workers. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight I'm joined by MacDonald Netshitenzhe, Deputy Director General at the Department of Trade and Industry. But what really is a fine line between a nanny state, perhaps, and personal responsibility. I don't mind being retrenched to get rid of my debt. It seems like a terribly good deal, but I don't think that you're thinking about me.
No.
So who is it aimed at? What's the idea?
Actually, it is aimed to all those people who are working, the working class, as well as people who are being retrenched in all sectors. But we take an example of mining and the manufacturing as examples, but there are other sectors. So all in all is that the issue of over-indebtedness has been in government plate for the past 4 or 5 years. So the Credit Act wants to restore some stability because people are so overly indebted.
But let's take a step back. The National Credit Act has been nothing but a shambles and a disaster in terms, big eyes, in terms of its failure to keep credit grantors under control and also to keep people borrowing money under some level of control. It was ill-conceived and badly executed. Comment?
No. The issue is that the Credit Act, when it was conceptualized and put into place, actually it encapsulated South Africa during the 2008 global financial crisis. That is on record. Yep. So therefore we went on amending it again to say the guidelines on the issue of affordability assessment in order to deal with the credit grantors, to be very cautious and not to give reckless lending.
No, that's absolutely the set's falling apart. Don't you worry about that.
Not to give reckless lending is that we must turn the guidelines to be having teeth in a form of regulations. That has been done in so much that therefore now it is compulsory, no longer a choice to have the reckless, to control the reckless lending, and then now we are implementing. That's why you will hear the African Bank as an example, and then you will have cases maybe in the area of Capitec, whether it has won a case or not, but it shows that the National Credit Regulator is starting to bite.
The punishment for any corporation that behaves unethically or behaves irresponsibly is that the customer to whom they lent the money defaults and they don't get paid back. They provide for the loss and then write off the loss eventually. That's surely punishment enough. What you're suggesting through a move to forgive the debt of people who are retrenched, while it's good for those who are retrenched, punishes the lender and lets off the borrower. Now surely there is a mismatch of incentives here. No.
The borrower actually, always we must have in mind the borrower and then the credit grantor, all of them. It's a balancing act. So therefore the borrower, we are saying you have paid maybe during your heyday, you have paid say 95% of your debt, and then now all of a sudden circumstances changes. When they change, therefore, that's what we're talking about, to say the 50,000 that is left, the credit grantor should not take your house and then sell it in auction, and then you are left dry in the street. So we are saying, why can't we deal with that a small percentage and then have a debt forgiveness? As an example.
Okay, but I take out my loan for the first time. I borrow 100,000 rand to build this house, and I go and build it, and I've got the home. I've only paid off 5% of the loan. I get retrenched. Do we write off the 95% and I get to keep my new home?
No, not necessarily. It's an issue of talking to the credit grantor to say what can be done in this situation. But generally people, we find that they have been up to date these are the people that we're concerned
Now,
about.
so who becomes the arbitrator then, the objective arbitrator between between a lender who in good faith has entered into a credit agreement? We might not like the terms of the credit agreement. We might not like the fact that for the first 5 years of the agreement they were charging 34.5% interest. That stuff is iniquitous.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's put that aside for a moment. It's a legal agreement.
Yeah.
And then you've got somebody who runs the risk of going into default through no fault of their own. Platinum's below $1,000 an ounce. Gold is not much better, and they lose their job.
The minister will issue. There will be an empowering section in terms of the act that we're intending to amend, and then empowering section empowers the minister to issue regulations. So it's not going to be just off the cuff. There will be regulations. There will be features that need criteria that need to be followed. It will be fair for both the economy, the debtor, as well as the credit grantor.
But who becomes the arbiter of who owes what to whom in the event of somebody falling on hard times? Is it the role of the National Credit Regulator at that point?
Yes. We are encouraging them to start to discuss with the credit grantor. Then the matter may even end maybe with the National Credit Tribunal, as an example. So it's not the whims of the minister, but there will be a set criteria.
How far are we down the path then of creating the regulation? Because for lenders, it's going to be absolutely pivotal in seeing that regulation as to how they make future loans.
Yeah, we are preparing cabinet memo now, now that I'm speaking to you. Probably somewhere in the 15th of June, we will be approaching cabinet, and then cabinet will consider that, and then it may go into the wider public consultation where the potential debtors and the credit grantors will have to talk to the criteria, as an example, and therefore probably it will be a perfect document like our constitution. And then
that'll be a first piece of regulation that is perfect like the constitution. That'll be a first.
For your information, the Credit Act, when it was passed, it was not opposed in Parliament by any party. It is the first act that we handled.
Well, then,
it was not.
Which is why MPs should never be involved in financial matters, because they missed the great big loopholes that the private sector drove trucks through. And that's the big risk here. Clearly, look, there's been abuse in the private sector of people who are desperate for loans.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there not a risk, though, that this has the opposite effect, where it becomes so punitive to lend that the credit grantors shut up shop for a large number of people who then forced into the informal sector, because the formal sector just won't deal with them anymore, and there you've got absolutely no say as to what happens.
Let me start with the informal sector. These sharks, you are referring to the sharks.
The loan sharks.
Loan sharks. The regulations now are published. They are going to be implemented. They are saying any person who is in this credit market loaning money, grantor, zero up to infinito, you need to be regulated. Some of them were not regulated. So as for now, it's an enforcement issue that we must consider in order to deal.
South Africa has got some of the world's finest legislation, some of the world's greatest regulation, and some of the most incompetent enforcement of that regulation and legislation. You're doing the right thing from a regulatory point of view to bring those loan sharks into the net.
Yes.
But you're only regulated if you choose to be regulated. If you choose to behave like a mafia boss in a rural area or in a township, who is ever going to catch you?
Yeah, but in the main, let me finish the point of enforcement. So therefore, we need to come with capacity building. So in order to deal with people who may go to the loan sharks, and then the loan sharks needs to be regulated. So all in all is that we are expecting that by next year or end of this year, this act or the bill will be concluded. And then we start with the enforcement. Reckless lending should be punishable, and then it's a prohibited act, and therefore this credit market, in our view, is that it's a market that can drive the economic growth, but it needs to do it in a proper way.
Look, I wouldn't want your job for all of the tea in China. I really wouldn't. But I do think that you're facing a thankless task of trying to regulate guys who operate underground. So you can write all the legislation, all the regulation you like. And how are you going to enforce it when the enforcers are going to focus on the listed companies, the publicly listed companies, the people who choose to open their books because they want to be seen to be transparent, and the regulators will go tick, 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 we're doing our job. In the meantime, all of these guys are going to continue operating in the background.
Yeah, we are changing the act to such an extent that there should be a reasonable suspicion, that we agree, but we are crafting it in a way that it must be intrusive. Acting under the Constitution. I mean, you can craft your legislation to be constitutional, but have intrusive powers.
Give me an example as to how you see it working. I am a loan shark operating in Ramolutsi. How are you ever going to track me down?
Yeah, no, we also have to work with, coordinate with other enforcement agencies. It may be, say, SARS as an example. The issue of the hawks, the IRBA, that is the auditors, as an example, in summer that if everybody is on the stable, the intelligence, which I'm not a party to it, should also provide information for us to deal with the underworld. It's a skill, it's not our skill, but we are saying coordinating the state machinery, we think we can be able to enforce this act for the benefit of the economy, because as for now, the consumers can no longer drive the economy. They are all distressed. But this project started 5 years ago or so. It is not just starting now. Yeah.
Now, forgive me for being cynical, but when one lives in South Africa, being an optimist means you look both sides when you cross a one-way street. And I wish you luck with it. I really do, because we need the regulation, and certainly we need to stop the loan sharks ripping people off the way they do. And also in the listed sector and in the even formal sector, we know that there have been some shenanigans and dirty tricks as well. The Deputy Director General at the Department of Trade and Industry joining us this evening, MacDonald Netshitenzhe. Wish you luck with a very, very big job on trying to regulate the ungovernable. Until next time on the Moneymakers, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.